I can't say I'm surprised, but I can say I'm disgusted. The story for this morning, the Daily Beast harassed the guy who made the Nancy Pelosi video. If you're not familiar, there's a video of Nancy Pelosi that was slowed down a little bit. I don't know if he actually made it. They're accusing him of making it. He may have just posted it. They've published his name and his private information. I've gone into the article. I've removed his image. It's absolutely, I'm dumbfounded. There is a code of ethics for journalists that they do not follow. They don't, okay? You may find that many of the bigger players, New York Times, etc., they're fine. But these digital outlets like the Daily Beast, which for a while was associated to some degree with Newsweek, they doxed a guy, okay? There's a thing in journalism called minimizing harm. That means you have to make sure your story doesn't cause damage to people you're talking about. However, what we've seen as of late is journalists purposefully trying to cause damage to people. And the Daily Beast is doing this right now. Yashir Ali said, I gotta say, it sets a really bad precedent when a private citizen, particularly someone who is working a blue-collar job, has their identity publicly revealed simply because they made a video of a politician appearing to be drunk. His identity offers nothing to the story. I could give 2S about this guy, but news orgs have to decide if the person's conduct isn't against the law, does the story benefit by naming them? Story is newsworthy. Discovering who made the video important. Naming them isn't. Doesn't add anything. Sets bad precedent. But of course, the Twitterati left is jumping up and down, dancing gleefully. Wow, good job, Daily Beast. We found the guy who made a meme. CNN did the same thing, remember? Somebody made a video. It was a meme, a GIF of Trump wrestling with a guy who had a CNN head. CNN tracked him down, and they said they reserve the right to publish his private details, based on his behavior. This is I'm gonna say it, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, the terrorism we are seeing from the press. Get in line. Don't slight us, or we will destroy you. I'm actually working on a decently big story. We'll see how far it goes. But I've received some leaked communications from some of these far-left journalists, and I can say I know exactly what they do. Now, before we get into all this, go to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are several options for donating. There's a cryptocurrency address. There's a PayPal address, physical address. But, of course, just comment, like, share, and subscribe. The engagement with the YouTube video really, really does help. So this is the story. We found the guy behind the viral drunk Pelosi video. The video that racked up millions of views and sparked a national conversation was uploaded by a sports blogger from the Bronx, currently on probation for domestic battery. Why does any of that matter? Why should we care about someone who made a meme video? It's actually rather terrifying. In the story, Kevin Poulsen of the Daily Beast actually admits to harassing the guy. And so let me do a quick search because I don't want to waste too much time. Check this out. At first, Brooks didn't respond to emails, phone calls, text messages, Facebook messages, and a direct message over Instagram, and he blocked this reporter on Twitter. On Friday, he called back, explaining that he was worried over the prospect of being publicly linked to the video fakery. Let's break that down. This guy, the Daily Beast, sent emails, phone calls, texts, Facebook messages, and direct messages. He was being ignored. That's harassment. Literally the legal definition of harassment. So, harassing messages are intended to intimidate, which he says he was. He was worried about the prospect of being linked. They wouldn't let it go. They hound him, and they go into detail. They even explain where he works, where he lives. This is the absolute psychosis of today's media. I received some late communications. I have to work with legal, and I have to work with making everything squared away, so I can't reveal too much right now, but I have been working with some other journalists. And what I know, and I've known for a long time, and many of you know, is the method of what I would put this beyond activism, and I would put it close to terrorism. The idea of, there's economic terrorism, there's reputational, there's damage you can cause someone beyond physical, right? And so I want to make sure it's not overly hyperbolic. But I'll say this. Activism, in my opinion, would be something like, hey, the Daily Beast, stop doxing people. And then you rally a campaign to boycott, these news organizations that dox people. You're targeting companies and powerful individuals who are doing screwed up things. What do you call it when a powerful corporation targets private individuals and does damaging things to them? That's not activism. A massive corporation wielding its power, an activist wielding the power of a massive platform to cause harm to private citizens, that is not activism. What a private citizen does with their services is their own business, and it has no bearing on the rest of the world. Activism, because I used to work for nonprofits, typically would imply you're trying to, do something for the world to make things better. But how will naming this man do anything to make the world better? It won't. Well, in their minds, it will. They are instilling the fear in people that if you dare make a meme, we will publish your name, what you do for a living, where you live. We will harass you and hound you on every social media platform until you bend your knee. And there you have it. That's not activism. That's terror. That is telling people that if you don't fall in line with our politics, we will terrorize you. Is it physically violent? No. But think about the people who've lost their bank accounts, been banned from social media, can't find work. Their lives are destroyed. And that's the true fear. So here's what they do. And I actually have evidence of this. They'll send, let's put it this way. Huffington Post. Huffington Post regularly produces articles in defense of Antifa. Okay? So here's what these journalists do. They reach out to a sponsor, a parent company, an investor, a bank. Find the author of a certain article. They'll then find out where they bank. It's not that hard to do, trust me. They'll call the bank and say, we recently found out that person X is receiving support from you. Person X is a known collaborator and supporter of a group labeled terrorists by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. Your banks, so the question we have for you is, why does your bank support terrorism? And is your support for terror and political violence against company policy? What I've done there is, it's kind of the question of like, do your parents, they're silly trick questions, they're loaded questions, implied to make it so that the question assumes the answer before anything is said. Why do you support terror? Well, the bank's going to say, we don't. Well, I didn't ask you if you do or you don't. I asked you why you do. The implication is you do. So the issue is, these writers from Huffington Post, there are many of them who've actively supported Antifa. Antifa has been deemed domestic terror by internal FBI documents and DHS documents. The DHS ones I know for a fact. The FBI ones apparently came from a report from The Independent. I could be wrong about that, but that's my understanding. So that basically means anyone, you can frame it exactly like that. That's what they do. It's literally what they do. Now look, it's one thing if you find a big business is funneling money to a certain organization. It's another thing when there's a private individual who is, holds certain political beliefs, and you call their bank and say, why does your bank support terror? Well, the bank then says, we don't want to have anything to do with this, and they terminate the accounts of these individuals. I actually have evidence to leaked documents. We'll see what happens. But I will say I've reached out to some of these news organizations, and they clammed up real quick. Because they've, like I've pointed out before, they've started hiring activists. I guess because it's good clicks. But look at this article. Think about what this really is. A guy took a video of Nancy Pelosi, slowed it down 25%, uploaded it. He didn't make it go viral. It just went viral. The media then demanded it be removed, even though it broke no rules, and it's a common occurrence on the internet. How many videos of Trump are there where they make him look crazy? There's probably millions. Nobody cares about those. They all of a sudden care about this. And this is an attack on a private citizen. John Levine of The Wrap tweeted, the real lesson of the Daily Beast article is that the concept of a private citizen is over. If you vote, post things on Facebook, make an off-color joke at Thanksgiving, you are fair game. The guardrails are off. Why? I ask you, why would they publish this person's name? But we can also talk about Mr. Carlos Maza, too, and we can go more in depth on the psychosis of the revolving door of the far-left extremists in media. Media's dead. You know, I worked for Vice back when Vice was more of a punk rock libertarian outfit, and it slowly devolved into a psychotic, admittedly, I left before it got really bad, but I could see the signs. Fusion, wow, that was sad. You know, when I started at Fusion, there was actually an attempt to be legit. They got rid of their editor-in-chief, brought in a woke editor-in-chief, and all of a sudden, the insanity, the psychotic dogma started to become pervasive, and the company just collapsed, and they lit all their money on fire. Quite literally, Fusion got woke and went broke, and it was nightmarishly hilarious. It was terrifying. I ended up, I guess I would consider it to be golden handcuffs. I was on a contract, but they paid me really, really well. There's a revolving door. You look at who works for Media Matters for America and where do they work now. Carlos Maza, for instance, the guy who's trying to get Steven Crowder banned. You know, he used to work for Media Matters for America. He produced propaganda videos for an activist organization, so Vox hired him. Talia Lavin had to resign from the New Yorker after she falsely smeared a wounded veteran as having a Nazi tattoo. And then she got hired by Media Matters for America. After that, she got a job at NYU. She got offered a job. Unfortunately, nobody enrolled. But this is the revolving door of how the far left, how extremists, right? Look, I don't care if you're a communist or a socialist or an anarchist. I have a lot of friends who are. I care if you're an authoritarian. So I don't have them pulled up, but I'll just slightly go over this. Carlos Maza, the guy who's trying to get Steven Crowder banned, has repeatedly, I don't want to say repeatedly, but has at one point called for physical violence against people to humiliate them. He says milkshake them all, humiliate them at every turn, or something like that. He then goes on to complain that Crowder called him mean names, and he wants Crowder banned. And he's been going on for days demanding YouTube take down a competitor. What a world. That's authoritarian, literally. A far left authoritarian, he calls himself a Marxist, I'm not making that up, who demands the authority take action against his enemies while he advocates for violence against the same people. That's quite literally authoritarianism. And this is who works at Vox. These people are psychotic, sociopathic, evil people. Not every journalist falls in this category. Like I said, you look at New York Times, you look at Wall Street Journal, it's fine. But they are infiltrating these companies, and it's one of the reasons I GTFO. Vox offered me a job. I went into the Vox office, and I remember, being introduced to some of the sociopaths that work there, people who I genuinely believe to be sociopathic, who put out fake news, and I was like, never going to happen. And I walked out. It was actually a really fascinating conversation because I ended up meeting one of the higher ups, excuse me, and it was going great up until I saw who was actually in the office, and then it became a really, really awkward meeting, and I was like, you know what, I don't know, yeah, maybe, we'll see, and then I left, and that was the end of it, because the company Vox is not a news outlet, and there's another thing too, in that I do like the idea of NewsGuard. If you're not familiar, NewsGuard, you can't really see it. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. You probably will. If this thing does appear, sometimes it doesn't appear because the screen grab doesn't get it. But you can see how they rate the Daily Beast and say it doesn't publish false content, gathers information responsibly. Like, I don't know what responsibly means. Is publishing the name of a private citizen responsible? I'd say no. Regularly corrects or clarifies errors. Well, I would also say no to this too, because I know of several circumstances where the Daily Beast has published absolutely fake information. Handles the difference between news and opinion responsibly? Absolutely not. Avoids deceptive headlines? That's probably fair. And these things are fine. Who's in charge, etc. Here's what I'm going to be doing. I am right now talking with some people. I am going to be setting up potentially a nonprofit. We'll see how it goes, because the goal isn't to make money. What we're going to do is something like every 6 months, starting from when we launch. We're going to take a random sampling of 100 articles from all of these websites. We are going to go through them and look for any violations of journalistic ethics, and we are going to mark them. Any violation of ethics will result in an X. We then will provide a score to each company of X out of 100. You will find, because I've already done some preliminary reading, the New York Times typically scores really, really high. It's probably going to be like an 80 out of 100. There are some instances where they might screw up, but the New York Times, they label opinion, they label editorial, they label commentary. They follow most standards of ethical journalism. They could be wrong. You can not agree with them. They could be biased, but they get close. The Daily Beast, on the other hand, I imagine would be like a 40 out of 100. And probably most of the 40 is going to be like general articles like, today Trump said he's going to build a wall or something, right? Things that are really simple news. A lot of news outlets are going to have those really simple articles, but I imagine BuzzFeed will probably be, these are my bets, like, if we did a random sampling of 100 BuzzFeed articles, we'd probably find like 60 out of 100. Huffington Post would be around like 50 to 60 out of 100. Daily Beast would be like, 40 to 50. And you'll probably find that there are going to be a lot of conservative outlets that score way, 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 way low. Really low. Because as much as I think the Daily Wire is like, it's okay, it's like strict commentary. So it might not even make sense to give them a rating because they're not a straight news outlet. They provide commentary. Almost all of their articles are some kind of opinion or perspective. The Daily Beast, however, and that's fine. That's fine. I don't care if you do that. I don't care if the Daily Beast wants to write an article talking about why they think their politics are good, so long as they label it as an opinion piece. So this is like some of the criteria. You know what? I'll wrap it up there. So if you're interested in something like that, reach out. Pitch at subverse.net. We're going to be building that out. But I guess the point of this video is, I'm not going to read into this because I want to make sure I don't actually participate in publishing this guy's information. But this article, quite literally, is just doxing a guy who they don't like. Fall in line. I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you in the next segment, and adios.